Hello, everybody, and welcome to Blue Jays Today, where you boys always have something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Nicholas Playalog.
And I'm your host, Adam Peddle, and today, guys, we're going to be looking at some big-time Ross Atkins quotes. You guys know we're suckers for punishment over here. Whenever Ross Atkins comes out with some big-time quotes about a bunch of bull, we love to suck on those juicy quotes. But, however, today, he actually came up with some quotes that are very noteworthy, involving Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s extension and involving the Juan Soto sweepstakes. So we're going to get into all that and more, but before we do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Blue Jays Today. So, he came out, Ross Atkins, talked to reporters. Ben Nicholson-Smith has a bunch of quotes on it. Keegan Matheson, Hazel May, a lot of these guys out there have these quotes, but we got a few of them that we really want to dive into. Starting with the Keegan Matheson one that talked about a notable thing regarding Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s extension and what Ross Atkins had to say about that.
Yeah, of course, right? Obviously, the topic of Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s extension is coming up quite a bit right now because of the Juan Soto signing and how much money he just went for, because it was obviously crazy. And there's a lot of comparisons between the two of them. Both going to be 26 years old in free agency. Both of them, young studs. Soto, a tier above Guerrero, but still very, very good. So clearly, Keegan Matheson asked about this, and Ross Atkins responded by saying that for the Guerrero extensions, they've got to stay disciplined. Nothing has changed in terms of our pursuit of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and we are hopeful to extend him. Now, for me, when I first read this, I was like, what are you talking about? Because everybody, it seems like right now, everybody, all the analysts, everyone coming out is saying, well, actually, what we just saw with Juan Soto does impact potentially a Guerrero extension or a Guerrero free agency or something like that. But Ross Atkins doesn't seem to think that it does, saying that nothing has changed. What do you think about all of that? What do you make of that?
When you say that nothing has changed, I'm assuming that they probably anticipated that this was going to happen with Juan Soto, that there was going to be a monster contract, that they know that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be the top free agent next offseason, and that, well, they kind of are already on the same track. They're already anticipating that next offseason could be a battle if they don't get the extension done, and that they kind of have an idea of what they think that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is worth, regardless of what Juan Soto did. Because, as they're very close in similar player types, but also a little bit different. Juan Soto's an outfielder, could be DH one day, gets on base a lot, has that home run pop. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., first baseman, same age, yes, of course, but has a little bit more of a contact ability. They're very similar, but yet not so similar in terms of the price tag that they're going to get next year. So for me, I think they kind of already have an idea of what he's worth, and that's kind of how I'm interpreting it right now, and that they are going to try and stay on track of that dollar amount.
Yeah, okay, and then that's super fair, but I guess, I would ask and I would push back in saying that, do you think that with what we just saw with Juan Soto, it has impacted that dollar amount of Guerrero a little bit? Or now that, we are starting to get a better sense as to how far some of these free agent negotiations can actually go.
Yeah, I think, obviously, if I'm Guerrero or I'm in Guerrero's camp right now, I'm looking at Juan Soto's situation and going, okay, well, if Vladdy right now, by a lot of analysts, he's valued at $350 million, right? I think I could get this up to $500 million. And it kind of goes back to a further point we made in a previous podcast. We know that Vladdy is probably not going to get extended this offseason or even during this regular season because of that fact right there, that I can go hit the market and the price will be set for me. Whereas when I'm looking at Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro and that whole front office of Blue Jays, they may have an idea of a price of what he's worth, but inevitably Vladdy, if I could beat that idea, because if that idea is tossed around to the Mets or the Yankees or the Red Sox, well, it's probably going to get higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree with all of that, actually. What I don't love to hear, though, is that they want to stay disciplined with that, because that to me says we have an idea of what Guerrero is worth. We think that he's worth, let's just say we think he's worth $400 million. I don't know if that's where they're at, but let's just say that that's where they're at, right? We think he's worth $400 million. When I hear that they have to stay disciplined, that to me feels like they have to stay disciplined to themselves with that number. And we've
Right.
known
And-
that Ross Atkins and the Rogers Communication Company and Toronto Blue Jays, they are kind of like this. In fact, we've actually talked to several MLB insiders saying that, the way that they approach these things is they get in a room and they punch out a number, and this is the number and this is what we're going with.
Right.
And it worries me that, if that is going to be the approach to these Guerrero extensions and these negotiations, because if you're Vladdy, you are looking at what just happened to Juan Soto. You are thinking to yourself, going to free agency is probably the way of it. And there are a lot of other owners out there, Steve Cohen specifically, but also the LA Dodgers, also the Yankees, also the Red Sox, who are not going to have that same level of discipline and who will have a fuck it mentality when approaching some of these negotiations.
Right. And I had a thought process there where, what if you're going into this offseason, right? You throw out a number there for Vladdy. Hey, we're Vladdy. We'll give you 420. What if he turns that down and the word got out there that you offered him 420? Well, now going into next offseason, which we already knew he was gonna go into because he wants to let the market determine. Well, if I get a 420 offer, I'm gonna use that as leverage to Steve Cohen and all these other places. Go, okay, well that's the offer right there. Try and beat it. And then for the Blue Jays standpoint, by throwing out that number, you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage right now.
Well, I don't. Yeah, okay. Sure, but what's the alternative to that? Don't offer him an extension.
Yeah, you have to. I wonder if that's what he means by discipline. We're gonna have to keep it low because we know if we keep it low enough, then the market's gonna start at a lower place. I don't know. I'm just thinking right now, why they're staying disciplined on this Guerrero extension.
Okay, maybe, but I don't agree with that mentality of thinking, right? Because ultimately, okay, well, lowball him, so then when we hit free agency, it'll be cheaper. This is a weird go-around where it's you have him on contract for a year, right? Just get the money done and the extension done now, right? If you actually did offer Vladimir Guerrero Jr. $500 million today, I think he accepts
for sure.
Right?
I think
so. That's the thing, right? You got to understand what the number is. You have a whole year of free negotiation, right? You have a year, and we all expect that if he goes to free agency, the number's going to be crazy, obviously depending on how he does next season and everything like that. But to, kind of be big braining yourself into thinking that, well, we're going to offer him less now, so then when he does hit free agency, it'll be cheaper. That to me doesn't add up.
Okay, I'll throw it to you. If you offer him $500 million now, is that an overpay, or is that? Or do you think that's what he's going to be worth when it comes to negotiations in the offseason?
I think that is probably an overpay.
Yeah.
But I also think that $765 million is an overpay for Juan Soto.
Yeah.
I think that $700 million is an overpay for Shohei Ohtani.
And I think the Blue Jays realized that over $700 million was an overpay for Juan Soto because more stuff came out from Ben Nicholson-Smith basically saying that the Blue Jays didn't actually offer him a contract over $700 million. And this kind of gets us into their window a little bit right now, looking through the window into the front office. Well, if they don't think that Juan Soto's worth over $700 million and that the whole rumors of us offering 760 or the highest amount is actually not true, well, it kind of shows us that, well, the Blue Jays aren't actually willing to go crazy and spend a lot of money, which is kind of a bad thing.
Well, exactly. And again, is there a reality where, okay, they were taking it easy in these negotiations, so then maybe they can go out and they can get Corbin Burns and they can get Santander and then they can also extend Guerrero?
Possibly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible. However, it does feel like with what we saw last offseason and then the way that, things are being discussed from the management side of things, that maybe that's not the route. You get all of these MLB analysts and insiders going, oh, the Blue Jays are going to be big spenders. The Blue Jays are going to spend super big, and they're going to go crazy. But then when you hear Ross Atkins actually speak, it doesn't sound like that at all. In fact, the last time that we heard from him, it was, well, we're going to have the same budget as last year. So it's you get all these other people outside the organization talking about how, well, this is one of the biggest market teams and, the second wealthiest owner and they're all of Canada and they obviously need to be spending big. And yet, when you hear from Ross Atkins, it never feels that way. So, I mean, yes, you could spin it in a positive light, being like, well, maybe we're saving money and whatever. I guess the faith that I have right now in the ability for them to actually spend that money is it's growing thin for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly, the last offseason they didn't go out and they spent, even though they said they had $700 million for Ohtani. So far this offseason, they haven't really spent any money. So if that's the case, and I thought about this where, well, how much money do you actually have to spend? You know, if they're not, or is it the fact that you just can't convince anybody to come here? Like, which one is it, right? If you don't have the money to spend, well, you're already at a severe disadvantage when it comes to the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. sweepstakes, if you actually don't have that money.
So this is just pure speculation from me. And maybe this is true, maybe this isn't. But I think realistically, there is money. I think that they have money. I mean, they are the second wealthiest team or what have you, right? There's money there. But I think that they don't want to overspend through the moon or through the roof.
They're
and ultimately, exactly,
they're
right?
Comfortable.
They're comfortable. And we know, maybe they don't know, but we know that the only way that you're going to convince these free agents to come here, being a 74-win ball club, being in a different country, higher taxes, what have you, is if you do overspend. Right. And I think that that's where the disconnect is here for them, is that we'll go and, we'll throw in our dollar amount, but, we don't want to go $50 million over market.
Yeah, and is that that word discipline coming into effect with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., where they're like, I don't want to go well over the market and
this
do
is
that?
What concerns me.
Right, and that's the thing, is like, we might have to face the reality that, well, they might have to not, they might not extend them this offseason, that they're going to let the market determine. But I'm just hoping, the only piece of hope I have left is that they haven't spent the money last offseason, and that we'll see what happens this offseason. But if they don't spend the money this offseason, well, then you better help to how they have the money to spend it in the following offseason to get a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension done.
For me, there's got to be a mentality shift, and it's actually got to be one that shifts towards doing something big and stupid, like other agents and other analysts have suggested that the Toronto Blue Jays should do. Being disciplined and staying with the course and everything like that is thoroughly important. And I don't want to get embarrassed on the free agency market either by spending $100 million more than we were supposed to for a guy that isn't that good, So I certainly hear what they're saying in that regard. But to get Guerrero Jr. on a lifetime contract with Toronto, especially if he hits free agency, you're going to have to say fuck it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to break the budget. You're going to have to go over. Steve Cohen has that capability, and that's always why he was the favorite to sign Juan Soto, and ultimately why, both of us were thinking that they would end up getting him. We are going to have to, as the Toronto Blue Jays, I think, have that mentality shift if you want to get a Corbin Burns, if you want to get a Santander, if you XYZ, whoever you want to bring in, you got to have that.
Yeah, and like I just mentioned in this podcast, like we don't know if they have the money or not. Like obviously they're Rogers and they have this, they're the second richest owning team in the whole MLB. But how much is Rogers giving to, said Blue Jays front office? Well, apparently in the Juan Soto sweepstakes, I just want to bring this up too. Hey guys, time for a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video. Hit your picks and knock it out of the park with Betway. Scan the QR code down below or click the link in the description to join the action. Available in Ontario only, must be 19 years older to participate. And guys, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content. Apparently, they had the authorization of the ownership to go further with Soto over the $700 million mark. We don't know how much further that authorization was, but it appears that the front office themselves, they held steady in their valuations, whatever that means. Is it a valuation of what we think Juan Soto is, or a valuation of our budget this offseason? Whatever it was, it wasn't. Whatever it was, they weren't going to spend over that amount of money for Soto.
And, I don't actually hate that because, God only knows, right? Maybe Juan Soto's contract in 5 years from now looks horrendous.
Right.
And probably their evaluations were more accurate to what somebody should actually get paid.
Right.
It concerns me that is the train of thought that they have, right? And and again, dealing with some of these other big-time free agents like a Burns and, Pete Alonso and specifically a Vladdy, your evaluations, you might have to go higher than what you're evaluating to actually convince these players. This is the climate
the
of the MLB right now.
Which is the problem, right? Because we have a front office that doesn't do that. I mean, when was the last time we actually went over evaluation? Maybe George Springer?
It might be, yeah.
Because of 150 million, and we got to get that mentality back. That window was opening up for the Toronto Blue Jays. There's a new window opening up in the next 2 years. Where's our guy to go and get that window extended? We don't really have that.
That's the thing, and if your whole goal was to actually be competitive in 2025, okay, great. But how are you going to do that other than going above and beyond and spending like crazy? If you walk into the offseason conservatively and it's like, okay, we're very conservative with how we want to spend the money. We have our numbers for each guy. This is what it is. You're going to lose out. Just like last year, you're going to lose out.
Yeah, they're going to lose out. But there is one more piece of hope that we could hang on to right here, and maybe it is that John Schneider came out and was talking about how they need to add somebody in the lineup that can do damage. Having a threat, as John's saying, you want that around Vlad. You want to do that. We make a lot of contact. We want a guy to make ability to make contact too, but that stands out to him. So, if that's true, if they really want to get a guy to add around Vlad, then yes, you're going to have to spend maybe not $200, $300 million, but you're going to have to hit that $100 million mark if you really truly want an impact guy to impact around Vlad. But that's what we're waiting, and that's what we're holding out hope for right now as Toronto Blue Jay fans if they make that deal.
And this needs to be a priority, right?
Yeah.
Again, like the way that John Schneider's talking about it, it sounds relatively important to me. Does the front office feel the same way that he does? I hope so. I really do, right? Because they're ultimately the ones that are going to be, dishing out the checkbook and all of that stuff. That to me screams an Anthony Santander. That to me screams a Pete Alonso. Go out and get it then, because we need it desperately.
Well, maybe this doesn't help, but John Schneider really wasn't involved in the Juan Soto sweepstakes either. He was there, but
Guerrero.
And neither was Guerrero.
Yeah, that actually came out, everybody. So, you'd think Vladdy and Soto, I mean, these are buddies. They played Call of Duty together. They play video games together. I mean, obviously, kind of grew up together, and they never really leveraged that contact at all with Vladdy. Now, maybe this is actually an argument, I think. Maybe they didn't want to do that because of the Vladdy extension.
That's probably why.
Right?
Yeah.
That's, that actually I could fully believe, because it's like, oh, well,
why would I use you as leverage when I don't even have your contract locked up, and I'm trying to convince your buddy to come here long? It's that'd be a weird situation.
That I could certainly believe. But yeah, I mean, it was ultimately, I think, in conclusion, we weren't that serious about Soto after all. And if they do want to be competitive in 2025, they got to get serious about someone.
They got to get unserious about getting serious with their money. You know what I'm saying?
True, yeah.
Guys, let us know in the chat, what do you think about the whole updates with Ross Atkins coming out talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and as well talking about Juan Soto. Hit the like button, smash the subscribe button. $3 a month to become a Patreon member. Shout out, thank you to all of our current Patreon members and to our YouTube members. You guys are absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and as always,
go Jays, go!